director of Brightburn. Yes, that origin tale for a evil version of Superman that was completely gory and bloody is a brand new family horror film. Yes, family horror film called Nightbooks. It's coming to Netflix this week, and it's produced by Sam Raimi. So it's gotta be good, right? What's going on, buddy? Welcome back to a brand new movie review. Today we're discussing Nightbooks. It follows Alex, a boy obsessed with scary stories who's imprisoned by an evil young witch in her New York City apartment. Again, this is directed by David Yarovowski, who directed Brightburn, and it is also starring the likes of Winslow Fegley, Lidya Jewett, and of course, Krysten Ritter. The main reason I was really excited about this was because of Krysten Ritter, and I got a lot of thoughts on this one, so I'm curious to hear your guys'. Have you heard about this movie? Are you guys excited about it? Let's discuss it all down there, and if you've already seen it, let's have a great conversation as well, and make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on movie content like this over here on a daily basis. Going to Nightbooks, once I saw that Sam Raimi was producing this, I got a little bit more excited about it, because Sam Raimi, I love as a director, and I also am very passionate every time he is producing something, because while it's not always great, Sam Raimi has always had this eye for something, and Nightbooks, you actually do feel a little bit of Sam Raimi isms in here. Well, yes, this is a family horror movie. I must give a little bit of a warning. Depending on how your kids are, depending on how scared easily they get, the third act of this movie, it didn't scare me. I can definitely see it terrifying some kids, because this movie actually reminded me back in the day where I would watch like Goosebumps or Are You Afraid of the Dark, and I'm not saying it's as great as those, but it did give me vibes of those in certain scenarios. And again, I'm not going to get into spoilers, but there was a couple different prosthetic monsters in here that I would look at, I'm like, that is actually very horrifying. If I was a child, I would not be sleeping tonight. So Nightbooks has kind of that nice, I feel like, balance to it, where it is a kid's film, but at the same time, it's also trying to scare kids as well, because every time we get kid horror films now, or kid Halloween movies in general, they're not as scary as they used to be, or in general just not as good, and I do think Nightbooks is at least a good movie. The biggest element of it all, though, is, I would say, the acting. The young performances from the kids in here are charming and delightful. I really like Winslow in the role, and Lidya is also really good. But, I mean, Krysten Ritter absolutely steals the entire show as the evil young witch. Not just from the makeup or even the prosthetics or even the costume designing, which is all fabulous. And I'm not just saying that because, I mean, the costumes are literally fabulous, but they're just greatly done. They bring this character and bring this new kind of flair to life. But Krysten Ritter, I've always found her to be such an interesting actress with every role that she takes, and she is very charming in here. She's very scary and menacing, but at the same time, she's this witch that does have a little bit of a background to her that you find out throughout it, and I think Krysten did a really good job playing this role, and I think she was the biggest standout of the entire thing. And in general, the mythology around this witch and this New York City apartment, and why do kids get, taken here? Why are they enslaved here? There's a lot of interesting aspects to it all, and I found it to be a little bit of fun. And I think this movie is just fun. It's a fun family horror film, and I was actually quite surprised to see that the director of Brightburn had done this one, because I liked Brightburn, but I didn't love it. And even though that movie was gory and bloody, it was fun for what it was, but it's not one that I've gone back to revisit too often. Nightbook, if I had kids and my kids enjoyed this, I wouldn't mind being like, oh yeah, let's rewatch this Halloween, or like the next Halloween, let's rewatch this. I think this is that perfect little Halloween movie to watch with your family and have some fun out of. I think David's directing in here is stronger than Brightburn, especially in the way that he's able to bring to life certain scenarios, and again, that third act was probably my favorite aspect. The other thing I want to give big major props to is the way that he actually stylized the movie. There's these cool sequences in here where Alex, played by Winslow, who is this young boy who's obsessed with scary stories, must tell the witch a scary story every night. These scary stories and the way that they are developed and told was in a very much a grindhouse flair. Not saying it's like bloody like Grindhouse. I don't want to get the parents upset and crazy over it, but it's shot in this very old school manner that I really liked. Even though I thought some of the set pieces were a little bit cheap in those departments, I dug it, and I thought that was some of the more fun aspects and brought me back to when I was a kid and would watch horror movies with my mom and dad. Now, With all those pros out of the way, let's talk about the cons. The CGI is kind of a mess here. I don't think it's good, and it's actually quite distracting. Now, this is going to be very different for every single person. For me, it was distracting. There's these little creatures that are creepy, but I don't know. They just felt like they never really went anywhere with them. And I always felt that the CGI was very off for them. And there's a couple other instances and other things that happen in here where the CGI is very eye-rolling, where you're like, oh, this is not good, especially for a big budgeted movie like this. And I mean, I don't know the budget, I know they probably wasn't the biggest, but if you can't do it, I would have rather preferred maybe more practical effects, because I'm just over some of these CGI creatures, and that's just how they do them. So that definitely took me out. And I will also say, I do think the movie runs a tad too long. This is kind of one thing. I'm either thinking the film's too long, too short, or maybe right in the middle. I didn't feel like this movie really found its balance of what it needed. It got a little bit repetitive towards the beginning of the movie, where I think if you would have rewrote the script just a hair to kind of get rid of a couple different sequences, it would have made the movie overall better. The Nightbooks is a really good movie for the family, in some way, shape, or form. You can debate that if your kids get too scared or not. Winslow is great, Lidya is great, Krysten Ritter steals the show, as always. I expected that, but the overall concept of this is a fun family horror film. I liked it. I liked the scares in here. I liked the prosthetics, and when they went practical, it was creepy. It was engaging. When they went more CGI and special effects heavy, it definitely took me out of the entire film, but the concept itself is very fun and a nice throwback to Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark. With all that said, I'm going to give Nightbooks a B-. Thank you once again, guys, for clicking on this. You guys are seriously all the best. Make sure to head on over to Sandwich on Films on how to see films early. And of course, it's a big thank you to you and a big thank you to my Patreon supporters, because without you, I wouldn't be able to do this. So of course, until next time, stay classy.